Well, we'll begin the tour of my layout room by being in the room just outside of it, where I have on the wall some of my Lionel stuff. The top row is top two rows are the turn-of-the-century HO stuff from a previous layout. Second from the top is the Commodore Vanderbilt train, which actually now turns out to be fairly valuable, and Lionel is re-releasing it, a copy of Mike's Train House is making it and Lionel's releasing it, or it's vice versa. Followed by the Santa Fe diesels, and on the bottom my beloved GG1 and Pullman cars. Now that's a reproduction GG1 that was released in '08, not the original one I got in 1948. It's in a box because its paint is peeled and the stripes have come off of it. The entrance to the layout is through this door, which has a Pennsy sign for Denison, the small town on the Panhandle division of the Pennsylvania Railroad, just south of New Philadelphia. There's a guy making those for money a few years back. Maybe he still does it. You send him the sign you want, he sends you back a thing in cast resin. It's fairly heavy. It costs about 85 bucks. But I think it's pretty cool. Now we'll go on into the room and take a walking tour around the layout and then do some running. The room is 17 by 26. You're looking down the 26-foot length of it, and around the corner there's an L to it that's a little addition to that. And then panning around here, this is the rest of the room, and the walk by past the end, and then another long corridor. The layout's built around the concept of a double-track Pennsylvania main line through Denison, Ohio. This town doesn't look anything like Denison, but the lower level of it is referred to as Denison, which allows trains to operate between upper and lower hidden balloons where there's storage tracks, and with escape ramps, so they can also run continuously around and around in opposite directions. There's no traffic right now, but we'll watch some trains run by in a little bit. This is the town of Denison. Now, it's really a three-level town with different names at each level, a trick from John Allen. And the Denison Depot is down there. The second level above is known as Zanesville, and it serves by the Zanesville Electric, and I think the trolley is just about to leave. Yes, there it goes, disappearing off into the distance through the downtown high-rise buildings of Denison, where it actually just makes a loop, comes back and stops here and waits to be reversed. The fun part of this, of course, is the mirrors which you see in the background, which gives one the illusion that there's much more that meets the eye than there really is. It's going underneath a branch of the PM&H up above. That's the Pittsburgh, Muskingum and Hocking. More on that railroad in a minute. But watch the streetcar now as it progresses, passes another one in an intersection, and of course comes right back to where it was stopped before. Continuing the walking tour, there's Denison in the distance, and we're following through yards in Denison with some storage and interchange between the Pennsylvania and the PM&H, which I'll explain later. There's a high-wide load train waiting to go, and of course the Pennsy continues around the end of the layout, down the other side, and disappears into the hidden trackage for the tunnel down here at the very end. Now, the rest of the layout is based on the Pittsburgh, Muskingum and Hocking Railroad, which is totally fictitious. It's a single-track main line with passing sidings that serves southeastern Ohio out of Pittsburgh, but runs partly on trackage rights over the Pennsylvania. In fact, it runs on trackage rights over the Pennsylvania to the town of Denison here, where the PM&H disappears on its own. And as you look at the depot, the tracks on the right are the PM&H side of the depot, and the tracks on the left are, of course, the Pennsy side of the Denison Depot. Now here's a PM&H train. Those are actually, of course, Milwaukee Road Sealanders that the PM&H bought and hasn't repainted them yet. And the gross hole in the nose can't be explained away, except that it hides a video camera. More about that in the future. Now, the layout has a nearby layout that you see in some of the views called the Wheeling and Lake Erie, which paints its bridge silver. And you can see the Wheeling and Lake Erie trestle in the background behind the power plant, and the PM&H trestle, which we'll talk about more in a minute, in the foreground. Now, during full operation, a dispatcher can sit at this CTC board and control the PM&H with controllers over all the turnouts and the signals for that line. The two video displays, the two monitors there, are views out of two locomotive cabs, so the dispatcher knows where the trains he's controlling are by looking at the screens and seeing what he sees out the window. The dispatcher can serve as engineers using power packs just below the right and left-hand side of the CTC board, but during full formal operations we have two other stations, so engineers sit where they see only the monitor and have a throttle and can only communicate by the signals. Now our walking tour will continue by following the PM&H right-of-way behind the diesels which are waiting to enter Denison. They're waiting for a clearance from the dispatcher. We'll go around the other side of the layout to look where they came from. Were those orange units to back up, they would enter the scene right here, coming out from under that tunnel, having gone around a helix, and progress along this bridge, the one behind the truss bridge, and up the hill. More on the scene in at the upper level in a minute, and proceed up the grade into a tunnel and out down at the far end of the layout. Continuing looking at the line, it comes on around, goes through a cut. It's supposed to be a highway bridge over the railroad right there, to the town of Carbondale, where it interchanges with a C&M. Now C&M used to be Cleveland and Marietta, but when I changed the layout, that's now called something else. I don't know what, but everything's labeled C&M. The main line of the PM&H continues straight through past the grain elevator, and the C&M line, which takes off from the Y and disappears into the tunnel, circles around and climbs a 6% grade. The C&M is operated only by shays to serve a number of mines, one of which is at the top of the hill. You can just see it beyond the hill. Continuing now on the PM&H's upper line past the coaling tower and water tower, which are part of the C&M operation, behind the grain elevator, around the corner, and heading now down along the other side of the layout. This brings us into Cambridge, which of course is the third level, the upper level of the triple-leveled town, which has the name Zanesville in the middle and Denison on the bottom. Crosses the urban area that we looked at before with the streetcar, and into a high-level station with an umbrella shed along the line on the bridge, and a depot with elevator and stair access to it from street level. Continuing on from the elevated depot, running behind some more urban buildings, and there's some urban construction going on there with some kits purchased but not built yet, and around and crosses the long steel viaduct over a river where there's a power plant. And we can see again the Wheeling and Lake Erie Bridge on the other side of the power plant, which of course is merely silver paint on this side. There's a mirror at work there, and disappears in to the highest point on its route, Summit Tunnel. We come out of Summit Tunnel into a helix, which makes a pass over an arch bridge around behind the mountains, in the mountain, and makes the lower exit from the bridge here. Now PM&H management does love to run long freights, where the engine and the caboose will be one above the other or below the other depending on direction. But it's very tricky. The slightest abrupt change in speed and you'll have derailments in the tunnel, which is not fun. Then the PM&H continues into the town of Athens Junction, where its line continues straight ahead to the other side of the layout to continue on to its ultimate destination, which is Lancaster, Ohio. But off to the left, and waiting to come off of it, is a branch to Athens, Ohio, where there's a pair of Jeeps waiting for permission to enter the scene. Also in the view is the C&M shay grade that climbs the high hill. There's a track cleaning car sitting there, up to the mine, and then back to C&M Junction. That tunnel brings us out to the street running through Zanesville, which is a pass through the urban area for the third time at the middle level, past some new construction being worked on, and into the town of Zanesville, where the streetcar line crosses the trolley line. But the trolley line is protected by an interlocking so that if those lights are flashing, the streetcar will not cross the track. So if somebody takes the block for PM&H, the streetcar has to stop short of the diamond. Continuing on now with the street running, past the big refrigeration plant, with its neon sign blinking, and we have about half a dozen more neon signs to put in the scene, and disappears into a tunnel to come out behind the A&P warehouse and around this side of the grain elevator, and finally through another tunnel, coming out into a switching area called the town of Somerset, which also has a helper pocket with a Pennsy mountain sitting there in case it needs to do any shoving, and on into the switching area called Somerset. which is really a suburb of the main other terminal of the PM&H, which is Lancaster, Ohio, which we'll see in a minute. Now, the PM&H becomes double track at Somerset to have switching leads for the city of Zanesville, which there's a major engine terminal, complete with roundhouse, lots of idle locomotives, most of which work. Another video train with a camera in the nose waiting to leave the depot of Lancaster. You can't see the depot because it's sitting there. And the PM&H did pick up a used copy of the Pioneer Zephyr to operate in local service, which is actually what did happen to those Pioneer Zephyrs in the 40s and even into the 50s. Finally, after Lancaster, the PM&H disappears around the curve, which if you look at it right, doesn't seem to go anywhere. But actually, of course, it's because of the mirror. The real tracks under the tunnel go into my workshop. Around the edge of the workshop and connecting with a large balloon so trains can be turned, and then some spurs off of that for more hidden trackage with more storage trains on them. And the situation here is best seen by the diagram on the local control panel. So there you have it, the Pennsylvania Railroad through Denison, very short run of it, double track for continuous running, and the PM&H, which has to have several operators to do anything because of the complicated nature of it. Or if you only want to run one train, you just give yourself all blocks in the area and you run one train. Now, DCC and regular DC are used in a mixed mode for a while until I get converted over. It complicates things for a while, but I've been very pleased with my progress on DCC, but very reluctant to create DCC locomotives out of the old analogs by putting decoders in. That seems to be a time and labor intensive or cash intensive operation. We're right on for some nice rail fanning. I hear the Spirit of St. Louis is coming by with some of these newfangled Baldwin centipedes on the front. They've been cantankerous, but maybe these will be running well enough to show up. There's also a Pennsy mail train in the area behind a T1. Maybe we can catch them both in the same run by. Well, there's the mail train. And almost perfect timing from behind the mail train, not stopping at Denison but running slow through the depot, is in fact the centipedes. The centipedes are under DCC, so they get full sound, and they're making a run through the station. I hear there may be another mail train coming through soon, too. Now, don't tell my friends that operate, but I love letting these things just run around and around, and I sit and watch them. Well, that's rail fanning for you. You stand by the track and you wait forever, and finally when you give up and go home, like something comes by. Under continuous running, the trains spend almost over half their time out of sight. We've jumped in the car and gotten ahead of it. We're down on the east side of Denison watching it go through. Very typical Pennsy mail train with a rider coach in the end. And guess what? What a coincidence. A growling pair of centipedes show up in behind. Okay, we're sitting in the B&O or the PM&H depot in Lancaster in the cab of a a B&O Shark making a PM&H passenger run. As we move, we'll lose signal from the video from the train occasionally, like we're doing right now. I don't know, I've never tried this before, and I'm watching my trackage because I want to make sure I got all my turnout set right. We're now heading around, we're going to come into Somerset. That corner of the layout's the worst in reception. Now the reception should get better. That switch is against us, I got to go through it. Sorry for the delay, I had to put the brakeman on the ground to go through the turnout. There's the helper waiting in the helper pocket. Now you'll see much gross hidden trackage constructions in the tunnels. And if at any point you see the floor rushing up toward us, why, I'll be screaming and running somewhere. Originally I was going to make the tunnels all black inside with black paper, but that turned out to be a pain in the butt. Now of course you can see on the TV. Now we're coming into Zanesville, where we'll be doing some street running, and hopefully the streetcar will be out of the way. Now we're coming into Athens Junction. Now we're going into the helix, part of which is in the tunnel and part of which is visible. The numbers are on the tunnel so my operators know where they are on the layout. I don't know why the video is so fuzzy, my apologies. Normally it's almost rock clear. Now we're coming out of Summit Tunnel. Well, no, we're going around to Summit Tunnel. We're in the upper level of the helix on the arch bridge, still climbing. Still climbing. The next one is Summit Tunnel. It's number 5. Yep. Highest point on the layout, up near the ceiling now. And then we'll come out and we'll have to run slow because we're on the high level trestle. And what you see over on the right is the town of Cumberland. I did not mention that in my walking tour. Now we're coming into that high level passenger station. Oh, no stops there. Nobody on the platform, so we'll not stop. And the embarrassment of not putting backs on my buildings is now showing. Now we're going to come into C&M Junction where the Shea line interchanges with a Y. That station is going to be replaced with a new 2-story headquarters for the C&M. That's where the highway bridge has been. It's not in yet. Obviously some scenery is needed and some hidden trackage is very visible there. Now we're going into a lower all hidden helix, and we will come out in Denison. Tunnel number 3. This is over 360 degrees in the tunnel. 360 plus 180. Now we're at the bottom of the helix. Now we're going to start climbing. And we'll pull into Denison Station and tie up. We're ignoring the red signals because there's nobody on the dispatcher's board. Now, the Pennsylvania Railroad interchange is to go straight on that other track. And we don't have something set. We don't have clearance in the yard for some reason. There's a freight sitting in the B&O freight track coming into the passenger side of the Denison station. There's that high and wide train. Okay, end of the ride. Kind of crude, but it's a lot of fun. It's more fun when the signals are working, and I don't know why the video isn't better today. I guess firing up a video camera is the same as having people come over. It makes things not work that used to work. Continuing on my walking tour, that 6% grade Shea Railroad ends in the town of Cumberland, which is a mining town. Small commercial buildings, some of them half-built, some of them not. A lot of the structures are from my old layout. And then Cumberland needs to have some building flats. But this is where the Shays work the coal trains and some merchandise mixed trains that come and go. And that's an engine terminal that came from my old layout. And a little bit of narrow gauge track is going to go in there because there's a little bit of narrow gauge track by the engine house, because I used to have a little bit of narrow gauge. And on along the side of the room, up to the big mine that justifies the town of Cumberland. Which is here. And another lower track that goes down, has a Y sufficient for turning an engine, and the gas electric car, and some coal storage tracks on the lower level. And finally, the track on the right that goes in loops down around to an even lower level and comes down out in the town of Midvale, right where the tunnel portal is. Midvale is a real town on the B&O near Dover and New Philadelphia, so I call this a piece of the B&O and have some B&O equipment on it. And the Royal Clay Products is the name of a sewer tile company, which is having construction pains. The work crew hasn't worked too well on it. And as in typical my fashion, there's really only 2 kills there for the thing. There's a mirror, and then there's going to be a building here, and then some of the buildings in the town. Then the B&O goes on down this track and around to a large hidden storage, long hidden storage for some B&O equipment. Now that happens to be a Rivarossi Y6 N&W. And boy, would I love to get an EM1 if BLI ever comes out with one. But that's these trains can now be reversed down here by going back into a tunnel and then backed around the loop and be headed out. So there's room to store 3 B&O trains down here. And that completes the tour of the layout.